Many would call Rob Van Dam a pioneer and innovator in professional wrestling. His martial arts background, unique offense and unconventional attitude made him stand out in both ECW and the WWE. Van Dam's high-octane matches in ECW got him world recognition as he became a hot commodity in the 90s, and by the time he was signed by Vince McMahon, he was one of the select few who were welcomed with open arms by the WWE audience. In this first of a two-part series, we will look at the career of Rob Van Dam, starting with his time in Extreme Championship Wrestling. Rob was so captivated by wrestling that after seeing WrestleMania 1 and 2, he ended up buying a ticket to attend WrestleMania 3 in person. Rob has since said that his favourite wrestlers as a kid were the Ultimate Warrior, Leaping Lenny Poffo and the Blue Blazer. Van Dam though was already in a WWF ring before WrestleMania 3 when he was selected from the audience to kiss Ted DiBiase's feet for $100. This is a clip though that I'm sure a lot of you guys have already seen. Rob had made his mind up that he wanted to wrestle for a living, so he would need to seek formal training. In the meantime, Rob took instruction on as many disciplines as he could, including karate, taekwondo and kendo. As luck would have it, the original Shiek was training guys in Detroit and Rob was accepted into his training school. It was here that Rob met Sabu, the Shiek's nephew. This led to Rob and Sabu becoming friends, pushing each other to create and perfect high-flying offense and daredevil moves. Van Dam has since said that his professional wrestling training was tough, as Shiek had his students work stiff, and when it came time for one of the Shiek students to step into a ring, local guys would sometimes refuse, knowing full well that they were going to be in for a rough night. So Rob would graduate from Shiek's training school and went straight to work. In 1991, he found himself in an independent in Florida where his real name really didn't sound good enough for promoter Ron Slinker. When Slinker recognised Rob's martial arts abilities along with his resemblance to Jean-Claude Van Damme, Rob Sikorsky was renamed Rob Van Dam. Over the next few years, Rob would work in the USWA, South Atlantic Pro Wrestling, and he even challenged for the World Junior Heavyweight Championship in All Japan Pro Wrestling. Throughout Rob's time in ECW, he would continue to work in All Japan Pro Wrestling. In 1992, Rob signed with WCW, where Ron Slinker changed his name to Robbie V, due mainly to Bill Watts not liking the Rob Van Dam name. Rob would leave WCW in 1993 due to his run being uneventful, but of note, he did have a televised match with Vinny Vegas during his time in WCW. At the beginning of 1996, Rob Van Dam signed with Paul Heyman's ECW. It was here that Rob would develop the character that eventually ended up in the WWE, although to be fair, the version that we saw in WWE was definitely watered down, to be generous. RVD made his debut by defeating Axel Rotten, and he came into the company as a babyface. Almost immediately, RVD's character and on-screen persona represented that of a laid-back stoner. This indeed was art imitating life, as it's well known that Van Dam has been, and still is, an advocate for cannabis use. Reflecting his beliefs through his TV character served Van Dam well, as there was literally millions of people who could identify with Van Dam's attitude. Along with this, RVD was doing some really impressive ring work, so the mixture of RVD being a cool laid back guy along with being a pretty dazzling pro wrestler made him an instant favourite in ECW. He really did stand out in the promotion. RVD's friend and training rival Sabu also found his way to ECW, and the two were booked into a series of matches, the end result being Van Dam turning into a bad guy. Sabu and Van Dam traded wins at ECW Hostile City Showdown and ECW A Matter of Respect, with RVD refusing to shake Sabu's hand at the end of the latter. Rob Van Dam would align himself with Bill Alfonso during this time period, who previously worked as a heel referee due to his strict following of the rules in the normally chaotic ECW. In the end, Sabu would gain the upper hand in the feud, with 2 further wins at Hardcore Heaven 96 and The Doctor Is In. RVD entered into a feud with the highly underrated Doug Furnace, who would eventually get assistance from the equally underrated Phil LaFawn, working here as Dan Crawford. Seeking a tag partner to help him even the odds, Van Dam turned to his rival Sabu for help, and the two would become one of the most successful tag teams in ECW history. Van Dam and Sabu defeated Furnace and LaFawn before going on to have highly exciting matches with the Eliminators during early '97. The highlight of their feud came at CyberSlam when the team squared off in an entertaining tables, ladders and chairs match. So this will be the point in the video where you're free to check this out for yourself, but do make sure you come back to me. If you haven't watched ECW's debut pay-per-view Barely Legal in '97, then you really do need to see what happens after the Van Dam and Lance Storm match. RVD was brought in as a last minute replacement for the injured Chris Candido. Van Dam won the match, grabbed the mic and proceeded to shoot on Paul Heyman and ECW. RVD was unhappy at being a last minute replacement, and he felt, rightfully so, that he should have been booked on the first ever ECW pay-per-view due to his work rate in the company to that point. In the midst of getting new sold out chants, Rob Van Dam said, "I don't give a shit about getting respect from any of the boys back there in the ECW dressing room, including Paul E. I sold out to myself by putting my boots on and getting in the ring tonight, after obviously being chosen as a second line wrestler to fill in for somebody being out injured. I swallowed my pride for one reason: business. Because by defeating Lance Storm here, Rob Van Dam is now worth more money here, and Rob Van Dam is worth more money elsewhere." After cutting this promo, the ECW audience chanted at Rob Van Dam to, quote, "get the fuck out." This was due to Rob Van Dam being spotted backstage at a WCW event and being rumoured to have discussed a potential contract with Eric Bischoff. In short, RVD was upset at being left off the pay-per-view in the first place, but Paul Heyman managed to smooth things over with Van Dam beforehand by adding him to the show as a replacement and allowing Van Dam to team up once again with Sabu. Paul Heyman also promised Van Dam that he would be a main representative of ECW when the company invaded the WWF in a few months' time. The timing of the 1997 ECW invasion was actually pretty perfect for Van Dam. Fans already thought he was possibly leaving for WCW, but Van Dam secretly knew that ECW was going to invade the WWF once again in '97. By playing up to being too good for ECW and threatening the crowd to disappear and join one of the big two companies, RVD and Paul Heyman were actually working the usually smart ECW crowd. Due to the working relationship between ECW and the WWF, Rob Van Dam did indeed take part in the '97 ECW invasion of the WWF. On the May 12th, '97 edition of Raw, Rob Van Dam showed up and aligned himself with Jerry Lawler, who had been ripping ECW apart on commentary for a long time. RVD said that ECW was a bunch of low-budgeted wannabes that couldn't hold on to a talent like Rob Van Dam, before making quick work of enhancement worker Jeff Hardy. Jerry Lawler also called RVD Mr. Monday Night during this episode of Raw. Back in ECW, Tommy Dreamer was angry at RVD's betrayal of ECW, and the two entered into a feud. Jerry Lawler would also make appearances in ECW, eventually leading to him teaming with Sabu and Rob Van Dam. The remainder of '97 saw Van Dam compete in multiple matches with Dreamer, losing the majority of these showdowns. 1998 began with RVD feuding with the Triple Threat, which eventually led to him capturing his first championship in ECW, the TV title. He defeated Bam Bam Bigelow for the gold, and RVD would go on to make the championship prestigious in ECW. His first big defence of the title came at WrestlePalooza in '98, where he and tag partner Sabu wrestled to a time limit draw in another very good match. While holding the TV title, RVD and Sabu also captured the tag titles, making RVD a double champion. Van Dam defended the TV title against the likes of Lance Storm, Balls Mahoney and Too Cold Scorpio, but it was his rivalry with Jerry Lynn that is most fondly remembered. In short, you need to see the RVD vs Jerry Lynn matches from ECW in '99. The two men helped establish ECW as not only a place filled with hardcore wrestling, but a promotion more than capable of displaying a high level of in-ring wrestling ability. Rob Van Dam would never lose the television title. Instead, he would have to vacate the belt due to injury. ECW was facing hard times in late '99 and early 2000, and Van Dam was scheduled to work a champion vs champion match against Mike Awesome, which certainly could have helped things at ECW, but it never happened. Van Dam suffered a broken ankle during a title defense against Rhino at the beginning of 2000, and therefore he was out injured. RVD was able to make a comeback to ECW before the doors closed. In May of 2000, he worked against Jerry Lynn once again, but was defeated due to outside interference. He would then set his sights on recapturing the TV title that he was never defeated for, but was unsuccessful when he challenged Rhino at ECW Anarchy Rules. At this time, ECW was in serious jeopardy as the company faced financial problems. Van Dam was not paid a large sum of money that was owed to him, and he made the decision to miss loads of shows. He did, however, show up at ECW's last pay-per-view. At Guilty as Charged in 2001, Rob Van Dam defeated his longtime rival Jerry Lynn in another excellent match between the two. ECW then closed its doors after two further shows, neither of which featured Rob Van Dam. RVD would go on to sign a short-term contract with the WWF in order to test the waters. He was heavily involved in the WCW ECW Invasion storyline, where he garnered cheers from fans as his reputation for being a highly entertaining and unorthodox superstar far surpassed WWF's desire to book him as a heel. In part 2, we will look at Rob Van Dam's time in the WWF.